Hello, hello, comrades. This is Comrade Felicity coming at you pre-recorded. Yes, folks, I am out of town as I am celebrating my 22nd birthday with friends and family alike. And so I pre-recorded this segment last night with comrades Shakti and Meir in a discussion around I.C.E and Anti-I.C.E organizing. Yes, folks, I am so excited to discuss this. We did not discuss this as it just happened today, but I did want to bring up the disgusting fact that a woman was brutally murdered by the I.C.E Gestapo in Minneapolis. She was shot 3 times in her car as she was observing what they were doing, which was kidnapping a family, of course. And this will not stand. This is disgusting behavior. This is unprecedented behavior, and we must fight back. So, folks, while we do not discuss that in this episode, I want to remain transparent and understanding that we do know that this occurred. The party is currently helping organize with other organizations vigils and resistance against the disgusting act done by ICE. And I want everyone to, if you can, get out, get loud, and fight for your rights. And remember this person. Remember her. And so, folks, I hope you enjoy this segment, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye. Okay. So welcome back, listeners, to the Liberation Hour. This is the first episode of the new year, 2026. Woohoo! Everyone, I am here joined by some wonderful New York comrades who are here to discuss ICE, everything to do with ICE, everything that's been going on. They have a lot of really good, interesting information that is vital for us to know here, comrades on the streets. And so if you guys would like to give yourself an introduction, and we'll get this party started.
Yeah. So my name is Meir. I am a cadre in the American Party of Labor, and I'm also a steering committee member of BRRN. It's my pronouns are he, him, and it's nice to be here.
Hello, I'm Shakti. My pronouns are they, he. I am a candidate member of the American Party of Labor, and I'm also a steering committee member at Buffalo Rapid Response Network.
Wonderful. And can you explain, like, what is the steering committee?
Okay, so I can say more or less, although the organization is organized in more of a mass org sort of way where decisions are made in a collective basis by all members. There are times that either, well, one, there are certain responsibilities that have to fall to certain people, and then there are also times that decisions need to be made in a like a quick uh or that there has to be a like a decisive decision made on some complicated issue that people are having trouble coming to, and that's where the steering committee would step in.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. I only ask because I think that folks would be interested in knowing kind of like somewhat how our organization works. And also because I know that our party is part of a lot of ICE rapid response networks. Is this correct?
Yeah, yeah, I know that we're also we also participate in one in New York, but I wouldn't know the full extent of our involvement. I do know that we are involved in several different cities, though.
Right, yeah. And so, as it pertains to New York and especially the ICE raids that may or may not have been happening there, all of the experience that's been happening, what is your guys' experience been with the ICE raids since they started once Trump took office, and how did you kind of start getting involved in anti-ICE work? And
ICE raids were always an issue, even under Obama administration and the Biden administration. But with um, Trump administration, obviously, it's more just gotten more public attention, and uh, yeah, that's when we decided to get involved in um, anti-ICE organizing and community defense in general. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think while at the just to add to what Shakti is saying, at the time that we did get started, there weren't any other um or at least any other organizations taking on the role of like Ice Watch within the city of Buffalo. So when we did start, it was sort of this idea that like there were a lot of organizations who had more resources than us, but they didn't seem to be doing anything. In that time, there are more organizations that have popped up, and we do work with them. But it was as things, I think, not only have things gotten more like I think things have specifically gotten more attention because obviously the Trump administration has been much more blatant, much more has tried much less to cover these sorts of actions under the the cloth of some ideal, but rather just comes out and says what they're doing, and that has brought more people more interest in, which also sort of spurred us to try and get something started.
Right, yeah. And I like what Shakti mentioned that ICE raids have been happening under Obama and Biden. It's just that they're getting more attention now. And I think that it's really important that, organizations, as you'd mentioned, Comrade, the discussion around organizations that have resources and they aren't necessarily using them to support communities. It's nice to see that the party is trying to step in and take that role up, even with our limited resources. It's all about people power and the masses. And kind of tying those two things together, I think a lot of people like to think about, wrongly, of course, the Obama and Biden administrations as some kind of relief from the rampant corruption and violence that is happening under the Trump administration. But the fact is that the same corruption and violence still happened with the Democrats. It's something that we need to continue to remember as we organize, and continue to remember that liberalism is not going to save us, and there needs to be an actual revolutionary organization. And so, as it pertains to ICE, what do you think are some of the most important concepts to understand about community resistance against ICE and the work that you guys do?
Would you want to take this one, Shakti? Or
um, you
I
can
have
take
some
this one.
thoughts. Okay, all right, all right. So most immediately is that I think a lot of, and I think this is true of a lot of organizations or movements in general when it comes to issues that have to do with migrants, is that there's sort of this idea that like the community is coming together to protect this group that's not a part of the community, and also that like the community is coming together to protect this group that like uh I'm sorry for that's at least it's not a part of the community, and because like they make that distinction, they're develop in order, I guess what I'm saying is they don't try and bring the actual people that are being affected into the decision making and into the organization and the workings of the organization itself, but kind of treat them as like an interest group that is like they're doing charity to. And I think that besides the fact that like uh besides the fact that it's condescending to people, it reproduces the sort of like uh I guess reformist NGO type organizations that precisely, or it reproduces those sorts of organizations that precisely are at this moment failing to respond to this crisis.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it's almost introducing a class dynamic to the relationship between communities that are trying to protect migrants being targeted and the migrants themselves. and that rather than showing solidarity and an understanding of equality between two groups of people, it's instead creating this rift of the haves and the have-nots in a way that I don't think people are meaning to, in like a malicious sense, but rather a like, we are here to save you, which
Yeah.
is can be really condescending at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. And besides that, it's just that I mean, we all understand that the you know the working people in a sense have no nation, and so when we talk about like organizing specifically in America, we have very large populations of migrants. We have large populations of migrant workers that provide labor on in the farms of our country and our agricultural production. And it's important to understand that those aren't like that part of organizing the American working class is realizing that these people who are within our country that are typically not understood as American very much are the American working class. That the distinction between us is a formal distinction, and that uh, yeah, I guess it's important because in order to really fight ICE, what we have to do is make communities capable of defending themselves to the point that when ICE enters a community, it's openly hostile for them, right? And you can't do that by getting people on the other side of town in the college or whatever to to be to care that that's important and it helps, but it's more important getting these communities to be organized on their own and working together so that way they're able to effect changes that they'd like to see in our country.
Yeah, it's helping give the people the tools to actually support themselves rather than rely on just the charity of outside actors to quote unquote save them. And it's very much it's empowering, and it's about having actual solidarity, because if it was us in this position, we would also want to be given the actual tools to protect ourselves rather than rely on others to protect us, and rely on their charity and their goodwill, which often comes with strings attached.
Mm,
I've mentioned this a few times before on the show, but I used to work for a nonprofit, and when I was going to college in Colorado. I worked for a homeless nonprofit, and oftentimes, in order to allow people to stay at the shelters, there was a lot of restrictions on, like, you have to be clean from drugs. You have to there was a lot of restrictions keeping people, whether it was single people or families, off of out of the shelters and away from the beds that we have open, because they don't meet the many different restrictions that many NGOs require of people, rather than meeting them where they're at and also trying to help strengthen them from the bottom up rather than impose different rules on them that might not actually be like helping in the short term. And so connecting that, I think that as it pertains to supporting migrant communities, it can often seem as though like people see them as like somewhat of like second class citizens, because that is certainly how they are treated
mm,
in this country. But the fact is, I really liked what you mentioned, Comrade, where it's talking about, this is an international movement. We are an international proletariat, and this idea of citizenship here in the United States is very much a way to distinct between labor that is represented, and labor that isn't. What would you think about that?
no, I think that's a very concise summary of what I was trying to get across. Uh, Shakti, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes. So in terms of how Mayor was saying that uh, immigrants are also the part of the working class and not like a separate um, entity. One of our goals at BRRN is also to build community defense as well. It's not just about ICE or just about immigration. In the long term, we want to uh, make a network that in the community that can defend itself from fascists and uh, the ruling class.
And teach each other the skills as well, the sort of skills that are necessary to have that sort of like working class self-reliance. I think that was really well put.
Right. And like I think this speaks to a need for working class people in general to build that kind of solidarity of an alliance. And it's not just an alliance of like, sharing resources and information, but also um, actually preparing each other and supporting each other and resisting with each other against the ruling class, which is aiming to exploit us for all we're worth while paying us as little as possible. And so I think that it's incredibly important to stand in solidarity against ICE, as obviously, with the migrant community, because this is in many ways mirroring a lot of what we've seen in other fascist regimes, especially very early ones, and especially in Germany, just of a different variety of people being kidnapped off the streets for XYZ reason. For whatever reason, the fascists have decided that this group of people cannot be allowed to stay in the country, whether it be migrants, whether it be an ethnic minority. And I think that there's a lot of ties actually between trying to remove all of the migrants that live here in the United States, whether documented or not, and the fact that this is directly tied to the fact that all of these groups that are being targeted are Latino, or from the Latin American continent, South America. And it's, as we just saw, the Supreme Court has essentially made it legal to racially profile people. And so, ICE is just kidnapping people off the street who are legal American residents or citizens. And it obviously shows that there's a clear racial element to this. What would you guys how would you comment on that? What do you how do you feel about that? I guess we would all feel pretty bad about it.
Yeah, I absolutely think there is a racial element that it's pretty evident. I think um, as fascists always do, they're just scapegoating um, minorities and oppressed um, to hide the problems with capitalism.
Yeah,
And
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
oh no, you can go ahead.
I was just going to no, I was just going to say I'm sorry. I was talking for a minute without the without unmuting.
Happens to the
The
best of us.
so yeah, the I think in the it's tempting or like not tempting. It's important, of course, to focus upon the final outcome, the sort of like the final possibilities of these sorts of very brazen attacks against a certain racial group or ethnic or national group. Um, and think to the like the Nazi-esque final solution. But in the meanwhile, we also have to remember that like whatever the Republicans want to say in their propaganda, all of our there are still migrant labor, like our at least our agriculture, if not large parts of like meat packing, other sorts of industrial production are reliant upon migrant labor. So even in the short term, what this does is further isolates them from resources that could protect them from their employers, from overreach by law enforcement, and uh, basically is in many ways, whether we look at the at the end in the concentration camps they've made, where they're now making people work and produce profit for them, or whether we're talking about the worker who's still on the farm trying to to hide their status, their citizenship status. In any case, what it means is there's another group of people that they can squeeze even harder. They can get more super profits out of. Uh, and then when those people inevitably, raise their voice, they have this built-in system. And I would say that built-in system, not only on the ICE side, but, immigrant is a very, immigrant doesn't have a, immigrant is a term that's very easy to aim against other people. And um, I don't think it's alarmist to say that I don't think that Latin American immigrants are the only people, or I guess brown immigrants in general are the only people that these camps are designed for. I think they're just the first. Uh, I think they're just who they think the easiest target is at this point.
Right. And it seems as though with ICE, there's a lot of people are trying to figure out, what is the best solution to fighting back against, these oppressors, essentially these brown shirts, as they would have been called in Nazi Germany, or as we call them now in history as they're remembered. Um, there's a lot of questions surrounding, how do we organize against this extremely racist terrorist group that is waging a war against the undocumented and documented working class, who are the backbone of this of labor in the United States. And one thing that I would like to pose, this might be a little bit of a hot button topic. I am a believer in the doxing of ICE agents, mainly because these people have chosen to go out. Most of them wearing masks, some of them not, realizing that this is a job in which, as Chapo Trap House once put it, the most unemployed people are angry at the employed people, and are trying to arrest the employed people. And so I think it's just very interesting. And I view that strategy of doxing ICE agents as something that could also be a deterrent for people who might be interested in joining ICE to take a second thought, because it might not be actually socially acceptable within their community. Would you guys agree or disagree with that? Or what's your opinion on that?
I definitely agree, and I think Mayor agrees too. That's a great idea. Actually, we were discussing that internally. I wouldn't go into the details, but um, we were discussing that as a strategy. So yeah, I think it's very reasonable, and would definitely deter ICE agents from carrying out their activities peacefully, or even people joining ICE.
Yeah, absolutely. I think um you know as one strategy in the toolbox, of course, like if we look around, it's become very clear that the you know uh as Stalin once put it, reaction is on the march. That and that they're very actively and very intentionally trying to attack from every angle to wear people out by overwhelming them. And I think it's kind of important for the people who are trying to fight this fascism to realize that not only do we have to stop ourselves from getting worn out by this, but we have to be ready to fight back on, to use many strategies to fight back on many fronts. I think, the very fact that these ICE agents go out with their face masked in a time when there isn't, they don't, at least immediately, don't have to worry about any legal repercussion. I think already shows that they're sort of aware that there's a if not a future danger, there's an immediate social danger to being outed. I think, often people will show you their weaknesses without intending to. Um, Besides that, I also just think that when it comes to like identifying, one thing that we've talked about a lot internally, because, at this point, we've been doing a lot of we've done a lot of growth and we've done a lot of development, but we're still not at the point where we have a strong enough presence in every neighborhood that we can that we can really affect the sort of defense, the sort of, we can really teach people the sort of tools for self-defense that we'd like to at this moment. So we've kind of had to think about, how, when you're getting started off, do you kind of start off, get started, get into things, get your skills sharpened in this sort of struggle. And what we kind of decided on is that, rather than playing whack-a-mole and trying to like show up where like wait until things happen and then try and show up there all the time, it was a more effective, we still do responses, I don't want to say we don't, but but like in terms of like our plan development, it was more effective to focus on, how do we develop modes of, for more or less, for lack of a better term, or more or less surveillance. How do you know when they're leaving, so that way maybe you can tell people ahead of time. There have been other groups, we've talked a bit about this, but we're still trying to figure out what the legality is in New York. But there have been other groups who have, I'm sure some of the listeners, maybe Felicity, even, I know Shakti might have seen it, will like follow, they'll go find the ICE facility, they'll wait until they're leaving, follow them around in a car, and then when they show up to some staging place or some neighborhood, get on a loudspeaker and start yelling, that ICE, that Migra is here, that everyone needs to get inside and lock their doors and not answer. And what we kind of, so I guess that's a long way to say that I think any strategy that tries to make it hard before they've even got there is a good place to start for a lot of people, and also it's definitely part of the battle. And I think a big part of like making it hard right from the start is, like you said, making it so it's not something you can. So it's very well known that if you decide to be one of these Gestapo, that people aren't going to forget about it 10 years, 20 years, even a month from now.
Right. And it seems as though, there's a lot of different effective tactics for different communities. I live in Urbana-Champaign currently. I go to the University of Illinois. There are a lot of rapid response networks. There is a big one here that, community members can sign up and be a part of. And it's really inspiring to see, because it's something that I think they employ a little bit of everything, depending on the situation. And, but one thing they definitely do is ICE rapid response, to take pictures, and I try to identify community members who might be being kidnapped, and also agents who might be people within the community that are recognizable. And it's important because, I mean, I think what I found interesting that you guys mentioned is, it's not that you guys don't show up to and do rapid response, but it's that it's what's most optimal for your community and what you need at that exact moment. It's very much related to the actual conditions, rather than trying to apply a one size fits all approach to all of the different ICE raids and everything that they're doing. And so I would say like, sorry, this cat is meowing at me a lot. And I would say like my next big question for you guys is what has been one of the most effective strategies in gathering support and helping to train communities? Like, what do you guys do? Like, what is some of the more granular on the ground work?
Yeah. To start off, I think really getting started, we were very lucky in the sense that when we started this again, there was I guess I should clarify. I guess there was like the stirrings of someone else talking about starting a rapid response group, but like formally there weren't any. So quite frankly, the first like call to action we put out, which we just held a meeting at a library. We got 25 people, and then the second one we got 30 or 40 uh, people showing up. A good way of like getting people involved is that like I guess going back to the um the point about like effectivity and like rapid response is that even within rapid response, more effective than having like a group of people who are, so to speak, professional responders is having a like a more is having like a wider net of people who might not be involved internally, but in like building or building up the organization, but who are sort of connected and can act as, I guess, verifiers, for lack of a better term, when you hear about something, you can you get some sort of uh, sighting, right? Then when you see the sighting, you send it to this group of verifiers. The verifiers can go see uh, if it's something, and when they show up, usually either there will be enough people or that will be sort of part of the group that you'll need to respond if it's something that is serious, and if not, you'll be able to sort of mark it off, or maybe in some cases let other people know that like this area has a lot of activity in it right now. um, as we said, a lot of it's about kind of building feelers, because you want, the end goal is really to draw the people into the struggle of defending themselves. And I guess what I was trying to get at with the meetings in the beginning is a lot of times, especially if you're trying, you said you have a few rapid response groups or ice watches in your area. You probably also know that, many of them are more, I guess, uh, I don't know what the term I'm trying to use is here, but basically they're more like they are they're trying to just serve as like observers, right? Where they're trying to keep track and report things that might be illegal. But unfortunately, the are well, they never have been, but even more brazenly, this current administration is not follow. It doesn't seem to be responding to legality of things. So if you're most people realize that, and if you're actually coming out and saying, I want to we want to we have some people together and we want to like really figure out a revolutionary or like an effective solution to this, to how to confront these sorts of problems, people are actually pretty at least in our experience, people were pretty enthusiastic. um do you have anything you would add, Shakti?
Yeah, in terms of like um what you just said, uh there I would like to point out that within like liberal organizers and even leftist organizers, there's a tendency to uh, think that if you come outright and say that we're not just going to uh, s- observe, but we're going to we plan to build a network or an organization that does beyond just that, uh, that will deter people from joining. But from our experience, people, just the general working people, have been much more receptive to that than trying to sort of water down it.
Yeah, no, that's a very like a very good point. I think that, and that's universal. That doesn't even just go like, I think for our organizing, at least in Buffalo, it's been the case where um that there's sort of this like and I think a lot of people, we all come to Marxism-Leninism from different places, but we all came from somewhere. And there's this sort of like I think very prevalent idea that like in order to get people on our side, first we have to like get them to be like a different like that you can't just come out and like espouse Marxism Leninism, but that you have to kind of win people over to social democracy, and then from there win them over to like just understanding Marx, and then from there. And there's like a truth to that in the sense that you're not going to flip a switch in someone's head, but the most of the American working class, in my experience, and most of, I mean, even like the revolutionary strata that are not working class students, um, the lumpen proletariat, or like the migrant workers we were talking about earlier, kind of inherently, they not kind of, they inherently know that like that social democracy, that kind of like reformist narrative hasn't worked, and that it's kind of a hoodwink. And so in our experience, most people are, for lack of a better term, just kind of waiting for somebody to come out and say it, like, or not somebody, but some like organization, some like group that they can actually do something with, to come out and say it, and then after saying it, actually do something about it.
Right. And like that kind of makes me think about two things. First of all, in the past, we've had organizations like the Black Panthers that actually, while they were unpopular amongst liberals and conservatives alike who didn't like their radical agenda, the people were yearning for change, for radical revolutionary change. And that's what made them so popular. And that's what made them so dangerous, and why they were enemy number one on the list of Herbert Hoover. I believe that was his name, the director of the FBI at the time. And so, it's realizing that the CIA, the FBI, the deep state, if you will, um, they have been like, the one thing that these organizations, these institutions do not want is actual radical revolutionary organizations that are willing to nip this in the bud and go straight for the institutions and straight for the ideology that started all of this to begin with. And they realize that we are the actual threat. Liberals are often used as controlled opposition for things like this because they will never go beyond what is they will stay at the line. They will never go beyond that line of what is acceptable, because they realize that the liberals want to keep the status quo. They want to keep the institutions as they are, and in many cases, high-minded liberals believe that they can change the system from the inside to somehow serve working class interests better when the institutions themselves are built for the bourgeois class. And so this takes me now to the future where, Mamdani just got elected, and he is now the actual mayor of New York. And it seems like the Mamdani mania is still going strong in some cases, which I'm not too sure about, and I'm not personally too happy about, because a lot of people are getting really comfortable once again in the reformist camp, believing that this person is going to quote unquote fix everything. I even saw a headline from a leftist streamer on one of their clips that are uploaded to YouTube with the headline after he got inaugurated and was doing all of these executive orders. It's like, oh, he's fixing everything. When in reality, that's just not the case at all. And, we can look at a figure like Mamdani and see the very limited good that someone like him can do, but realize that at the end of the day, he still represents a liberal institution that does not want to do revolution, that is not Marxist, and will never be, because it represents the class interests of the bourgeoisie. And comrades, because you are from New York, I would like to hear your unique perspective on a Mamdani and what we need to be very weary of with someone like him.
I honestly, I know for unless they don't want to, I know for a fact that uh Shakti has a lot of opinions about this, so I'm gonna ask if they want to cover it.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with you that Mamdani is not a communist. He's not a Marxist. He is just a social democrat, and similar to how we were uh, criticizing liberal organizers and organizations um, for being not radical but liberal. Uh, I think it's the same goes for Mamdani as well. Um, but I'm not from NYC, so uh,
Yeah. Well, so yeah, it's just to clarify, we are from Buffalo, just but it's still the state of New York, so I will I think I
Oh,
remember
geez. I was sitting
but
here
no,
thinking that was the same place.
no. Yeah, no, you're not the only person who makes that assumption. So it's not but for future reference, you shouldn't tell most people from Buffalo that. Um but
Oopsie, oopsie. Y'all didn't hear that. You didn't hear that. I
but
definitely knew. I've been knowing from the beginning. We'll edit this out. We'll edit this out. It's fine.
yeah, but I will say at least personally that like there's a very uh I don't know what there's an almost sort of like there's a very real threat like when it comes to the the social democratic wing of the Democratic Party, specifically because uh I mean it would be one thing, well, not even one thing, it would still be social democratic, it would still be something that, in the end we would need to agitate and organize against. But I guess what I'm saying is that there are in other countries social democratic parties that actually have social democratic platforms. That is not, I mean, the one calling card of American elections is that they rarely do what they say, and so like the idea that the the Republicans are constantly saying they're going to shrink the government or decrease the national debt. They always increase both of those things. The Democrats, et cetera, healthcare reform, whatever. It's this. So the assumption that Mamdani is the very first American politician whose platform is actually going to follow through just seems incredibly naive. It's much more realistic that he's a pretty typical Democrat and that this is just the new thing they have to say to get us to vote for them. Um,
Yeah, like how many Obamas do we have to go through for it to get through y'all's head?
yeah, and I think I also think it's a question of like, you know, one of the particular dangers of social democracy. And it's not exactly social democracy, but we even saw this in American history with the New Deal, is that when you have this imperialist society and all of these corporations that are based upon extracting value out of the developing countries of the world, out of the neo-colonial periphery, then and then you make all of the social programs, all of the security net of the ordinary people dependent upon taxing those companies, you also produce a situation where the like social net of the people and the budget of the government is very directly related to the well-being of those companies. Like, I think people think about it in terms of like, somehow when we tax them, we're going to be in control of them now and telling them what to do. But it's like, but like, it
It
doesn't
somehow
change who
never
has.
works out.
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't change who has control of the resources. It doesn't, like, it's just yeah, that's a yeah. So it's like it's even more insidious, because it's not even just that like we might waste time. It's that, like it did with the New Deal, it actually like rewires labor unions, um or like those, all of these non-government organizations we're talking about, or whatever, to be extremely, to even if they're not explicitly, to be pro-imperialism, because in some way they're like, their ability to provide a more comfortable life to whatever their constituency is reliant upon it, to the same extent that capitalist profits are reliant upon it.
Yeah, and bringing it back to the ICE element of this, I think that part of the reason I bring up Mamdani is, there's been a lot of promises made, I feel, of Mamdani being very anti-ICE. And I just don't buy it at this point, mainly because of the fact that he's kept on Police Commissioner Tish, a rampant Zionist and someone who comes from a very wealthy and influential family, and has absolutely no intentions of stopping any of the police violence and the police state that exists in New York. And I think that a lot of people are once again, oops, fell for it again award, doing the same thing over and over, where they think that a guy who smiles nice and says all the right things is going to then follow through on those promises when they get elected into a party that is going to, take that shell of who they are and pump it full of money, so that it will eventually shill for whatever the Democratic Party wants them to shill for. And so, as it pertains to ICE, I think that it's important to amplify what folks on the ground are doing, what you comrades are doing, rather than focusing on electoral politics as a means to actually changing our conditions. Do you guys have anything to add to that, or anything to like add to that idea?
Yeah. So I think the kind of immediate thing that comes to mind is that, earlier we were talking about the Black Panther Party, and I think that one of the reasons that the Black Panther Party is such an effective example when it comes for when it comes to how to organize in the United States, is like, the CPUSA, the early CPUSA, I mean, was also, but it's like, because they, the CPUSA kind of, the 1930s, 1920s, 19 that area, CPUSA, because they traced themselves to like the pre-existing labor movement. It's not as easy to say, that's where they started and these are the steps they took. There was already a little bit of momentum by the time it the party was formed. Whereas with the Black Panthers, it really is that like a group of people started the Black Panther Party and they made right choices, and it's more you know So I guess
It's
the
very grassroots. It's very grassroots.
yeah, exactly. So I think that when you take a look at them and you compare it to something like, say, a Mamdani, campaign, is, when the Black Panthers came to their community, they didn't say, you know, that police violence, those the lack of food, one of the things they first started with was potholes. Those potholes, you know, give me a bunch of money and then I'll run in a campaign and make myself famous and get myself into a position of power. And then when I have that, maybe I'll get around to filling those potholes. They, got resources and filled the potholes, and through that gained support. So like I think a lot of people are kind of, I think the other side of like that we should be amplifying actions on the ground rather than amplifying just things that some politicians said, is also that like by amplifying things on the ground, people are able to see what organizations are actually taking real steps to work for them, and then they can make a more informed decision about like, okay, this is the organization that has my interest, this is the organization that is actually fighting. An actual revolutionary project doesn't ever ask you to rely upon this like huge suspension of like this huge leap of faith.
Right. They earn the community's trust. And I think as we wrap up here, I would just like to ask one more short question that I think is really pertinent to the discussion, where it's like, what do you think is like the most important aspect of community organizing that people need to like, really understand before they get into it, as they get into it, as they're in the thick of it? What is something that you, comrades, would recommend people keep in mind, or that along that kind of line?
Shakti, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure what off the top of my head, I'm not sure like what's the most important tip, but one of the tips I would say is not overcomplicating whatever organization or group you're trying to build, keeping it simpler in the start and then expanding on that and being consistent when you started. Um, and yeah, I think that's one of the things
No,
people
I
need to keep.
I that's a great one. I think honestly that consistency, like that's a really good point. But like even to expand on that, the kind of I think expanding on not overthinking it. I was actually having a conversation with one of the comrades when I was in New York, when we were at the summit for Korea, the summit for the Korean Friendship Summit, right? And um, we were talking about what were we talking about? We were talking about like whether we got invited to two different demonstrations after the summit, and we were talking about which demonstration to go to, and basically the it was like we had promised that we had told one group that we were going to go to one first, and then we like kind of just like we didn't really tell the other group that we were going to go, and we had a conversation that basically summed up as a lot of times in organizing the most important thing are kind of those like very simple principles that you learn almost as a kid, like to like be reliable, to listen to people when they talk, to like not speak about things you don't know anything about, like to judge based on actions rather than words, to a lot of like the things that your mother would tell you are the things that you have to really do to start building. But yeah, a lot of people sort of overcomplicate it, or they will, put they'll kind of like think themselves out. They'll think they'll be doing the right thing, but they'll actually think themselves out of just being a decent person, and that'll cause more damage to the movement than any like small mistake will, or not making it to this or that thing or something like that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really good advice for people who are just getting started, who are in the thick of it, who are maybe don't know where to start. I think that it's those are two really important tips that kind of go hand in hand, and that people should definitely think about as they get into organizing, especially around anti-ICE organizing and resistance. And so I want to thank you guys both so much for recording with me, especially in such short notice. And yeah, this was Comrades from Buffalo, New York, New York State, not the city, as I thought. And yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
having
for
us on.
having us. Yeah.
Wonderful.